This is Conversations with the Citizen. I'm your host, Tia Carol Jones. I'm here today with Quilen Blackwell. Quilen is the president and founder of Chicago Ecohouse. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Tia.
Thank you so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Madison, Wisconsin, and I moved to Chicago in 2011 to go to ministry school. I grew up in a pretty nice family, had every opportunity afforded me to excel. Thanks mom and dad for taking care of me. I just pretty much I'm a Midwesterner, and I pretty much just like have a history of like doing a lot of work in the community and also doing a lot of business.
Talk to me about your journey from Madison to Thailand to Chicago and the founding of Chicago Ecohouse.
Yeah, that's not your typical career path.
No.
But so, it kind of starts with my grandfather, who was a sharecropper in Arkansas. He moved up to Milwaukee, during the Great Migration, and seek a better work in life, for his kids, my mom at the time. My parents got, married in Milwaukee, but they wanted to leave Milwaukee, because at that time, and it's like the 60s, 70s, at that time, it was kind of rough for black people. So they wanted to move to Madison, to try to give a better opportunity for me and my siblings. Madison, I pretty much lived a, pretty posh lifestyle. My parents worked at nice corporate jobs. They provided, everything that I could have asked for. I had every opportunity to excel. I went to the University of Wisconsin to do my undergrad. And while I was there, that's when I started hearing about the Peace Corps.
Okay.
I wanted to do something at that time that, where I could serve my country. I could travel and see the world because, no one at that point in my life, no one in my family lived outside this country. So that was a big deal for us. And I was in community organizing, so I wanted to do something that was related to international development. So I, signed up for the Peace Corps and got placed in Thailand, working for Uncle Sam. And while I was in Thailand, I was in, Chiang Mai, the Lampang area, which is northern Thailand. And my job was to help rural farmers form a co-op, to help them sell organic fertilizer. And then, of course, I was teaching English as a second language to a lot of the high school students. While I was in, Thailand, it really was the first time that I was in a totally different culture in every way imaginable, which is what I wanted. And I think one of the things that really struck out to me, when I was doing my service, is the fact that, Thailand is a developing country, doesn't have nearly the wealth or resources of the United States. But, when you go out to the villages, you don't see, homeless people. You don't see this hardcore poverty. And that's mainly because people are take care of each other, right? It's a rural, more agrarian society. There isn't these, social safety nets from the government in Thailand like you have here. So really it's we the people are responsible for each other's welfare. So that really, struck me. And then the, what we call social enterprises, over here, that's just the way they did business. You know what I mean? It wasn't looked at as anything special. It's yes, you do business in a way that, seeks the good and of everybody in the community, and everybody in the village. So that was a very formative experience, for me at that time. Then when I came back to the States, I was working as a community organizer in suburban Milwaukee, around affordable housing. At that time, I'm a Christian, so at that time, God really started talking to me about going to Chicago. I didn't know anything about Chicago. I, don't have any family here, don't have any friends here. But I decided to, follow the leading of the Lord and came to Chicago. Went to ministry school first, and while I was at ministry school, I started tutoring at Team Inglewood High School in the, Inglewood neighborhood. And that was really my first time really interacting with hardcore sort of black poverty. Madison is, one of the things I say about Madison, it's 22 square miles surrounded by reality, just because there really isn't a lot of, there isn't a ton of that real hardcore poverty. And so I was most of my life I was pretty much shielded from that. So, when I was tutoring at the high school, and I'm like hearing these kids' stories, and I meet their families, talk to their moms, their dads. I mean, I couldn't help but think like, like I could be any one of these kids. You know what I mean? And I'm not anyone special. I was just lucky that I was born to a family that did have to deal with these issues. But like one of the things that the kids kept saying is like, hey, like we really would love to have an opportunity, for like a job and a career, but specifically something that's like more home based, right? Like something that's like culturally relevant to the community and the neighborhoods here. Not necessarily hey, you get some job skills and then you go downtown or you go to the north side. No, it's like we want industry here, right? And I just kind of felt like convicted, to be honest with you. And I just basically at that time just decided I was going to dedicate my life to doing everything I can to uplift Black people here in Chicago and hopefully the Black communities around the country. Just because I just sort of felt like if I were in these kids' situation and they met someone like me, that they would care enough to do what they could to help me out. You know what I'm saying? And that's really was the impetus behind the Chicago Ecohouse. So we founded that in 2014 with the mission of using sustainability to alleviate inner city poverty. Ecohouse took a lot of renditions over the years, but like what we've found that really worked is transforming vacant lots into solar powered flower farms, and then using those flowers to sell them at markets. So we sell bouquets, we do events, we make centerpieces, everything that you could expect to get a florist we can do. And that has done very, very well to the point now that we opened up a flower shop called Southside Blooms, located on 63rd and Morgan. And we're creating jobs for a lot of these kids, and we're really fulfilling our mission. So that's the genesis story behind Ecohouse.
Why is community service so important
here? So that's so like it really started with my dad. My dad really sort of modeled that for me. Growing up, especially when I was in middle school, like most middle school boys, you're kind of got the hormones kicking in. You think you're, better than you really are. And, I got a little mouthy with my dad, like when I was like in 7th grade, and he, wasn't very happy about that. My dad's really big on discipline. So, he told me at that time, like, you're going to volunteer at a local community center here, because he just sort of thought I was getting too big for my bridges. I had a warped view of reality, so, so you have a parent in here, So he, he made me, volunteer like that entire summer at this community center. And there's like a community center that really was, focused on like refugees and that kind of deal. So I just went in there. I kind of looked at it as a punishment at first, and but I had no choice. But as I was like, working that summer, I really began to just see, well, one that like there's some people who have like pretty hard lives. Like these were. At that time, like these were like a lot of the Hmong and Vietnamese, and a lot of refugees from the Vietnam War. So just kind of like hearing their stories and seeing the things that they're having to deal with, and it just really changed my perspective at a time where I really needed it. And I think like being like 12, 13 years old at that time, and kind of having that real formative experience in community service, it really just taught me that my life is really about what can I do for others. You know what I mean? Instead of like just being so focused on myself, trying to look cool, trying to like buy this, buy that. So that's really where it started. And then my dad was the one who introduced me to more formal organizing. Like he gave me when I was 16 years old, he gave me Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, and I was like, hey, you should read this. And from there, like I was kind of hooked on it. So kind of started with like, okay, I need to like look at life beyond just what I'm doing for myself and how I can help others, to oh wow, like there's actually like intellectual thought behind this. This is like could be a career. There's people who've done this before me. So like when I was in college, I studied the history of community organizing. My degree is in history, and I really began to learn a lot about people like George or Booker T. Washington. People like like Saul Alinsky and others who really like built the foundations, if you will, of like the modern community organizing movement, as well as just like shaping communities to be better. So that really just kind of gave me a lot of hope and encouragement that I'm not alone. Like, that there's people who came before me who had success at this. Because I think like that's definitely one of the things at that time that I was very concerned about was like burning out and like am I going to be able to really sustain this? So yes, like definitely like I found a lot of inspiration. Reading a lot of those historical stories and narratives that really helped to propel me to where I'm at today.
How can farms and urban agriculture help with the economic development in communities in the city of Chicago?
Yep, that's you could probably do an entire thesis on that, but I would say like everything comes from the ground. You know what I mean? I think like when you live in a big city, you tend to forget that everything hangs on creation. From the brick and mortar that you see that makes the buildings to the food on your table to the shoes you're wearing, like everything comes from the earth. So agriculture is really the first industry, so to speak, that has sustained human civilization. So when you kind of talk about how can it help to sustain economy here in Chicago, I mean, to me, it's like a no-brainer. I mean, it works everywhere else. It's been good for human beings all across the world since the beginning of time. So, like it seems to me like that it would be, pretty straightforward that you would look at sort of developing agriculture here in the city, particularly since we have, thousands of acres of vacant land, on the south and west sides predominantly. There's a huge market for this, whether you're talking about flowers or you're talking about food, whether you're talking about specialty crops like, jams and honey and that kind of deal. So, there's a lot of room within agriculture when you kind of think about it, beyond just like your corn and soybean farmers, in like rural Illinois, where people could make a lot of money and sustain themselves and really begin to redirect a lot of wealth back into the city. Because right now a lot of that wealth is being exported, right? When you go to the local grocery store and you're buying your fruits and vegetables that have been shipped from California, like that's where that money's going. You know what I mean? So yes, like if the money's already here. That's one of the things I like to stress when I talk about economic development here in the city is the money's already here to solve every problem that we have here. You know what I mean? So when people are like, oh, we have to go to the government, we have to do this, we have to do that, I'm like, no, like we just need to come up with more sustainable, hyper-local economic solutions to figure out how to retain the money that's, flying away and keep it in neighborhoods like Inglewood, Roseland, West Garfield Park. And then you can see these neighborhoods really begin to change, pretty quickly, once you start changing the way you look at how you structure your economy and your business.
And can you talk about where some of the farms are located in the city?
Yeah, so we have about 10 acres of farmland. Our farms are in Inglewood, West Woodlawn, West Garfield Park, Washington Park, and then we just got a site that's on the Cook County Jail campus. So, and then we also opened up a farm last year in Gary, Indiana. So, we are definitely looking to expand outside Chicago as well. But yeah, like they're all in, predominantly black communities. We're really focused on working with kids who are either, gang, they're gang affiliated or they're gang adjacent. Like the kids who are really the most vulnerable in our communities. And, they, like one of the questions I get a lot is like, like, are you sure these guys would love flowers? Like these kids are into flowers. And I'm like, yeah, they absolutely love it. They love being a florist. They love being on the farms, because it's all, it's a positive alternative to being in the streets. And, like 90% of these kids don't want to be out there. You know what I'm saying? So if they can come into a nice flower shop, make good money, be safe, you know what I mean? And also feel like they have a future and feel like they're building towards something. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a part of that, Like one of the things that our kids like to talk about is how they, they want to be here when this becomes like a multi-million-dollar enterprise. And they want to be able to say, yeah, like I had a hand in that, like, so it's more than just, hey, I come to work, I punch a clock, you know what I mean? Like they see this as, being like they're pioneers as well and helping to, bring a new future, for the community here on the southwest side of Chicago.
And that leads me into my next question. How are you inspiring and empowering the youth in the communities where the farms are?
So I kind of look at my role as being like a catalyst, So I fundamentally just believe like the talent's already there. You know what I mean? The resources are already there. You know, you just kind of need someone. It's like a cook. You know, like all the ingredients are there. You just need a chef to come in and just like do it up in a way that maybe you didn't think was possible, and all of a sudden you got yourself a delicious dish, right? But like I didn't. I'm not the tomato. I'm not like the potato. You right? So that's why I look at my role. I'm just coming in to be a chef to like be a little bit of a catalyst. But the kids are shining on their own. You know what I'm saying? So in a lot of ways, they're the ones inspiring me. Instead of me like being the ones inspiring them, because like I'm like, hey, what? You already have it in you. You already have the potential. They know they have the potential. I mean, I like to say like a lot of the smartest kids I've been around are right here in the inner city. You know what I'm saying? Because like they got that combination of like street smarts, but they also have like grit. They have like high IQs. They've been through a lot of like real world experiences. I mean, I'll take like any one of my kids over some graduate from like Harvard or MIT any day. You know what I'm saying? And like but they just haven't been given the opportunity. It's just been an ingredient that's just been left in the cupboard. While all these other kids in other parts of our city and around the country, they've been the ones who are considered more valuable, right? But like our kids are beginning to show like what they can do. You know what I'm saying? Like because in many ways, like this is a very forward-thinking enterprise that we're building. I mean, the idea that you can farm in the city at scale, using solar panels, using rainwater that you're collecting off like rooftops, you're making these like beautiful arrangements, and these are like 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. But if you were to look at like the boutonnieres, you were to look at the corsages, their new thing is making flower tattoos, and it looks just as good as any other florist that you see in the city, right? But they just picked it up. That's just how talented they are. So yeah, from my perspective, my job is just to be the catalyst. I mean, I'm not planning to be doing this forever. Like my hope is within the next 5 to 10 years, we really get traction and we really get to a point where we can hit critical mass. And then the thing just begins to take a life of its own, and then from there, my job's done. So that's the way I'm looking at it. So it's not, I'm not looking at this as the kind of thing that I have to be the one shouldering for the rest of my life, right? Like, it's just to basically give an example, show, these kids in our communities, like what they already have, what they're already capable of. But then once they catch that vision, once they see it, they're, we'll be off to the races as far as I'm concerned.
In those early days, was it hard to secure property to use for the farms? And did you have any opposition from either the community or residents or elected officials?
Yeah. Okay. Yep. That's a good question. Getting to more practical matters. Yeah. So yes, in the early days, it was hard to acquire land. I mean, even though there's a ton of land available, there's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy and politics to acquire it. Some of it's good reason. We got our first lot from Alderman Cochran, in the 20th Ward in 2015. And one of the things that he told us, at that time, why he's like why he was very hesitant at, giving new groups land is because like there's a high failure rate of a lot of community gardens. Okay. So he didn't want to tie up city land, with projects that are, to basically just contribute to the blight, right? So there's part of it we just had to prove ourselves that we're actually going to be a good steward. We're going to take care of this land, that kind of deal. In terms of opposition, yes, we've experienced a lot of different opposition. I mean, it's better now because, people kind of see that it works. But in the beginning, when we talked about flowers, we got a lot of heat for that. People are like, don't you know where we are? This is a food desert. People can't eat a flower. Like, why are you focusing on flowers? Like, there are a lot of people who felt insulted, by that. And we're like, hey, look at like this is this I understand where you're coming from, but we're more focused on like the cash crop. Like once you see money coming in, you're gonna feel very good. You know what I mean? And that's ultimately like what won people over. By the way, but then we also get opposition from like in Woodlawn, for example, communities where there's a little more gentrification. Like some of our neighbors who are a little more affluent, white, that kind of deal. They kind of look at it as like, well, I don't want to live next to a farm. It's affecting my property value, that kind of deal. So we've definitely had to deal with, a little NIMBYism from, I mean, Woodlawn's probably the only place where we encountered that. Okay. All the other communities, like that part of it hasn't been an issue. But yeah, outside of that, for the most part, people are pretty accepting of it. I mean, now people like love it. Like we, our main issue now is that like we got too many requests of people who want to like have us come in, and we're just trying to build our capacity to be able to build more farms and that kind of deal. But yeah, like for the most part, like a lot of people are just like, hey, like I'm happy you're doing something good in the community. I mean, I remember when this lot was, where a place where like kids would come and do drugs and that kind of deal, and now it's this farm. Like, hey, good job. So yeah, I would say the vast majority of people today look at it and they take pride in it, and they're very happy to see that's like kind of being returned to productive use, and when they see like the kids out there and they see that we're like kind of giving them work and job skills. Yeah, like for most people it's a no-brainer.
What have you learned about yourself and the communities you serve since you started Chicago Ecohouse?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, in terms of what I learned about myself, I think I learned that I'm definitely a lot more adaptable than I probably gave myself credit for, because, a lot of this has just been, like I'm just a dude, what I'm saying? Like, I don't really look at myself as anybody special. I just think, like, a couple things. One, I didn't quit, like there's been a lot of points where it looked like we were on the brink of failure. And, it looked like, it wasn't going to work out, but, we stuck with it. So I think like that was very important, because I feel like there's a lot of people who try to do something, especially something new, but they give up too quickly. So then, it doesn't come to fruition because you quit. I think the second piece of it, is that, I just wasn't afraid. I'm kind of surprised. So yeah, not being a Chicago transplant, not to talk about Chicagoans too much, but I'm kind of surprised at like how much fear there is in this city of like a place like Inglewood. Like I really don't understand it. Like where I come from in Madison, like we have like some rough areas, but this idea that well, we don't go there because it's we're afraid, it's too bad. Like that just wasn't something that I grew up with. Like it's like the exact opposite, because like Madison, we have like a lot of pride in our city. So it was like, hey, how can we go? How can we help them? What kind of resources do we need? To bring in, that kind of deal. So, I was just really shocked at just like how much fear there was. I mean, when I was talking about, like back in like 2013, like going to Inglewood, and like how many people were trying to like talk me out of it. You know what I mean? Like so many people were like, don't do it. It's crazy. Those people are going to eat you up alive. Like you have no idea what you're getting yourself into. And I'm like, well, I mean, people are dying over there, like, that's a huge problem. Like, are you okay with that? Because I'm not okay with that, and if something happens to me, okay, well, so what, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to live in a world where, there's a real obvious problem where human lives are being lost every day, and I'm just going to sit on the sidelines and say, oh, well, it's crazy to go and try to save someone's life. Like, I don't understand that logic, but, like, I got a lot of, that kind of thinking. Here in this city. So, yeah, I just really think a lot of it's just more of a mentality. Like, these problems are definitely solvable. You know what I mean? Like, these are not insurmountable challenges. But I think, like, so many people just get so, like, caught up in fear, that they make the ghetto out to be, like, a bigger thing than it really is. So then people just don't do it. They just don't do anything. You know what I mean? It becomes, like, paralysis by analysis. And I guess, like, what I'm kind of hoping, even, like, through our example, with Ecohouse is like to encourage more people to like, step out in faith, right? Not to be afraid of, a quote unquote dangerous area, right? Because that's the only way like things are going to change. That's the only way you start having these really unique and creative solutions, when you get over that fear and you basically commit yourself to trying to preserve human life, and all of a sudden, these miracles start happening. But yeah, I think until, you really, decide to, put the value of someone else's life above your own, that just doesn't happen. So, yeah, I think those are like a couple of things that I really learned, about myself, but also, my neighborhoods and the communities here in Chicago. And, even like with the teens, like that's one thing I like to stress with them is like, hey, you know what? Like, no one should be afraid of you. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're just a kid. You know what I'm saying? So, like, this idea that you got, like, oh my God, like, these are these hardened gangbangers and that kind of deal. I'm like, no, they're not. They're just kids, got caught up in bad situations, and they're just doing kid stuff, So, like, sometimes people be like, oh, how can you relate to these kids? Just by being myself. You know what I mean? By showing up. Like, like, at the end of the day, like, that's pretty much all you need to do. So yeah, I don't look at like, what we're doing as any sort of superhuman effort. It's just that, we're willing to zig when everyone else wants to zag.
Where can people go to find out more about Chicago Ecohouse?
You can go to www.chicagoecohouse.org. You can also go to www.southsideblooms.com. So, definitely an easy way to support us is by making us your florist of choice. So, if you want to buy a bouquet, your next wedding, quinceañera, when prom comes, Mother's Day, buy your flowers at Southside Blooms. That would be a great, great way to support us. It's a very easy way to support us.
Great. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like our audience to know?
I'm just very thankful for this opportunity and you guys bringing me in. I think for your audience, I just really want to encourage everyone to really kind of like what I was saying, really just that these problems that we're facing, don't be scared. You know what I mean? We don't need to be afraid of our neighbor. The Bible says we're supposed to love our neighbor. As a matter of fact, we're supposed to love our neighbor more than we love ourselves, right? And really, if you really want to see a better world and you really want our communities to be healed, it really just starts with that. It really just starts with you loving that kid, you loving that, grandma, you loving the person next door to you more than yourself. And then from there, that's when God can do the rest. So, that's basically my story. Basically it just started with me saying yes to God, to loving, people in the community above, myself, and he took care of the rest. I'm not that smart to come up with all these, sustainable farms and flowers. I'm not a very creative person. You know what I mean? I don't make the bouquets, by the way. I don't make any of the centerpieces. I didn't care anything about flowers before, I started this journey. So, and that's a real cool thing too, is you start becoming a different kind of person. You start doing things that you didn't even realize you were capable of. And it's my lifestyle is great. I basically have a very short commute, basically just walk from one room to the next room where my computer is. That's where I do my work. All the farms are within, in the neighborhood or real close by. Our flower shop's 3 blocks from my house. So, my kids are a part of it. That's the other piece too that, a lot of people were very concerned about me having kids, in Inglewood. But they love it. They go to the Montessori School of Inglewood. So it's just been a really great experience. And yeah, I just really hope that more people will be willing to, not succumb to fear and, be willing to step out in faith and, love their neighbors more than themselves.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Remember to make plans to join us again next week for Conversations with the Citizen, the place where real news